Hey everybody, Pastor Johnnie here, where we talk about things for faith, business, and technology. And today I want to give you 5 powerful lessons I learned about negotiation during a housing shortage. But before we get started, I noticed that a lot of people who watch my channel are not subscribed to the channel. If you could please be so kind as to just click that subscribe button or click that follow button if you're watching on Facebook. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. It's free, and this content will be delivered to you on a regular basis. Pretty please? All right, story time. It's my senior year of college, and I'm going up before the school year starts so that I can check into my dorm. I was at school at Prairie View A&M University, but the housing was managed by an off-campus company. It was a different company outside of Prairie View. They had a corporation that handled it. And so I show up to get my key and get started into this process of getting enrolled into my nice little apartment that's on campus, and they tell me there's a problem. You may have seen it in the news, but somehow this year that I was in school for my senior year, they had more people enrolled than they had housing available for them. And so they apologized profusely, told me that I'd get a refund. All I needed to do is sign this document and they'd get on my refund real quick. And that brings me to the first lesson: be patient. I could have just gotten mad. I could have signed it and gotten my refund, but I realized later on that that would have done more harm than good. So I took that piece of paper, told them I gotta make a few phone calls, but I'll be right back. I read through that document, and this was a document that turned out to be a release of liability and taking this corporation off the hook from providing me with housing. So of course I did not sign it, which brings me to the second lesson that I learned: use your leverage. I had leverage in the situation. They had my deposit, and they were required to provide me with housing as long as I didn't sign any release or get my deposit back for the room. I wish I could tell you that I thought about this on my own, but I had just seen an episode of Sister where they had a problem with their dorm. They got a refund, they signed the release, and then the university no longer had to provide them housing. So I was not going to do that. I used my leverage, and as long as they had my deposit and I did not sign the release, they were on the hook for providing me housing. And because I had that leverage, while they tried to sort everything out, they had to provide me with a hotel until they were able to find me a place. So use your leverage. The leverage is why you are at the negotiation table, and you use your leverage in order to get what you need out of the negotiation. Third lesson I learned: expect scope creep. Scope creep refers to a project that has seen its original goals expand while it's in progress. You start off a negotiation, and somehow during the middle of that negotiation, the goals change, the requirements change. When I left my junior year, I paid my deposit on the room for the following senior year. When I returned and they had oversold all the rooms, they then said that the rooms would only be made available to those who had paid their deposit and their first month's rent, in order to try to weed the people out who had not signed release, who had not gotten their refund, because there were still supposedly more people looking for a room than the rooms that they could apply. But I used my leverage. I recall which individual I spoke to when I paid my deposit. I had names, I had dates, so I used my leverage to combat the scope creep. which brought me to the fourth lesson. They don't care about your feelings. So as this negotiation played out between my mother, myself, and the corporation that was handling the campus housing, we eventually got to talk to executives. This incident had made national news. Corporate executives had flown in to personally manage the situation. And as we continue to use our leverage and be patient and combat the scope creep or the moving of the goalposts, the changing of the rules, we ended up in a room with a high-ranking executive for this company. And the reason I say they don't care about your feelings is I noticed as I walked through the office, they had a file cabinet in place with everyone that had talked to anybody from this company. They wrote their information down, they wrote the details of their information down, and they put it in a file cabinet. I happened to see out of the corner of my eye, that file cabinet was labeled sob stories. They don't care about your feelings. They may listen, they may add an empathetic ear, but in the scheme of things, they're only filing it away mentally as a sob story. They won't do much with that information. So you have to understand when you have these negotiations, not to bring emotion into it. Use the leverage you have and understand that they may try to change the rules. So you need to be patient and you need to make sure to keep your feelings out of it. I'm not saying to be an unemotional robot, but understand that they will all somehow mentally file it away as sob stories. Well, after several weeks of this back and forth and being put up in various hotels while they were looking to find housing for me on campus, this brought me to the fifth lesson. They will never show you all that they had. This story had played out all over the country for this housing shortage, this massive influx of people going to college. And I finally got a room after staying in several hotels on this company's dime. I finally got my room. I finally got my 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment on campus that was supposed to be for upperclassmen. And when I got to my room, it was empty. There was only one person that had been staying in the room, and he was a freshman. And so I asked him, had people been moved around? He said, no, I've been in this 4-bedroom apartment by myself. On the outside, they had no vacancies. But when I finally got in on the inside, it turns out there were plenty of vacancies. Now I understand they were looking at what they had, and it made no sense for them as a business to just let people in and then people be stood out. So it makes sense from their side to keep everything empty or as empty as they can until they finally get enough things straightened out. But they will never tell you their exact inventory, and they will never tell you all the resources they had. I had a friend in HR once tell me that if you have a job and you apply for another job and your current job comes back and gives a counter offer, not to take the counter offer from your current job, because that meant that they had it, they just didn't want to give it to you. Now each job negotiation is there are a bunch of factors that tie in, but the point that she was making is the point that I'm making. When you're negotiating with someone, the people on the other side of the table are not going to tell you everything they have. They have to hold a little bit back so that they don't feel like they gave everything to you. So if you keep that in mind, that will help you in the negotiation. So to recap, be patient, use your leverage, expect scope creep. They don't care about your feelings, and they will never show you all they have. Those are some valuable lessons for me that a housing shortage taught me about negotiation. What are some of the lessons you may have learned? Put those in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this kind of content, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Keep the faith, mind the business that pays you, and thank you so much for watching.